I've had the Sony a7C II for over a year right now, which makes it the perfect time to give my honest review on this tiny powerhouse. You probably already know the specs by now, so I won't discuss too many details. A hybrid photo camera just needs to tick a couple of boxes for me. At least a 24 megapixel full frame sensor, 10-bit colors for video, decent autofocus and decent IBIS. Besides that, the most important thing for me personally is the real world usage of the camera. How does the camera look? How does the camera feel? And does it actually stand in the way of shooting whatever you want to shoot? I would rather have a camera that inspires me to take photos instead of having lots of unnecessary bells and whistles. But for a filmmaking camera, it's a bit different for me. Those can be workhorses, and they don't necessarily have to look beautiful in my opinion. So I bought the Sony a7C II as a replacement for my Lumix S5 Mark II. I also had the Fuji X100V back then, but I sold it because I knew the Fuji X106 was coming. I know that APS-C sensors are plenty and that a lot of great movies are shot with Super 35 sensors, but I don't know man, when we have full frame cameras at almost the same price as an APS-C camera, then why get an APS-C camera? It's not that I wasn't happy with the Lumix S5 Mark II, but there are just a couple of things that I didn't really enjoy. The camera body was a bit too bulky in my opinion, and that's just completely personal. I missed a huge third-party lens selection from Sony, and the autofocus just wasn't up to par. Other than that, the Lumix S5 Mark II is still one of the best price to value hybrid cameras on the market right now. The last thing I want to say before we delve into the details is that I use this camera mainly as a hybrid camera, and it's only up until a couple of months ago with the addition of the Sony ZV-E1 that I'll be using the a7C II mainly as a photo camera. So my needs have changed over the last couple of months. But even then, if I go out and only have to pick one camera to bring with me, I'd always pick the Sony a7C II over the Sony ZV-E1. The a7C II traveled with me to Bali and the Italian Dolomites. Other than that, I use it at my content creator job at a car company on a daily basis. I shot some of my favorite photos ever on this camera. It's not necessarily because of the camera itself, but probably because of my editing style, which has changed a lot over the years. My edits look way more natural compared to my past edits. I do find, however, that the general colors of the photos and videos have improved a lot compared to when I had the Sony a7S III. Overall, the skin tones look more natural, and if you're worried about color signs or whatever, just forget that. You don't have to worry about it. This camera is almost as inspiring to shoot with as the Fuji X106 when you buy it in silver. The a7C II looks way more inspiring and aesthetically pleasing like this, which in turn inspires me to pick it up more often. It doesn't really look like a work tool, but the design and the looks of the Fuji X106 and other Fuji cameras in general are just unmatched. They just look so aesthetically pleasing, and I wish more camera brands would implement this more classic design of cameras into their camera bodies again. And it's really pleasing and nice to see that brands like Nikon are actually doing this with the Nikon ZF. The a7C II also won't be able to compare to these more inspiring cameras like the Fujis because of full frame lens sizes. But for what it's worth, if you have a Fuji X106, you might want to upgrade to the Leica Q system in the future, and that camera plus lens combination is bigger and bulkier than the a7C II with a small prime lens for sure. Combined with a high quality, low weight prime, this camera is a joy to work with. I currently rock the a7C II with the Sony 40mm f2.8 for most of my personal photography work. This lens feels very well built, has all the bells and whistles of a G Master lens, and is pretty small and lightweight. I'll probably make a separate video about it in the future. Other lenses I use are the Tamron 28-75 f2.8 G2 lens, the Tamron 20-40mm f2.8, the 10-20 f4 APS-C Sony lens, and the Resolve 33 and 85 anamorphic lenses. And all of these work great on the Sony a7C II. Autofocus is insanely fast. I don't think I've ever missed a shot. The IBIS is great as well because it allows for very low shutter speed shots. I also like the placement of the viewfinder a lot, especially for vertical shooting. Because of the placement of the EVF, your face won't be pressed against the screen. And you can shoot vertically without having to take off your cap, but then your face will obviously touch the screen. Last year was a year where I mainly focused on filmmaking. Photography took kind of a backseat for a while, so the biggest part of my experience with this camera consists of using it as a filmmaking camera. Like I said before, this camera shoots in 10-bit 422 and the colors I can get out of it are amazing. I never felt like the colors were hard to deal with when grading them. The autofocus is super snappy, the best I've ever had in a camera, and it features a dual native ISO of 800 and 3200, which allows for a great low light performance. Obviously not as good as the Sony ZV-E1 with a dual native ISO of 640 and 12800, but it's a nice middle ground. Last year I bought my first real cinema lenses, the Resolve 33 and 85mm anamorphic lenses. I really love anamorphic lenses. These kind of lenses really work well on this camera too. You just have to buy an FE2PL mount adapter. Unfortunately, there are no waveforms and anamorphic support on this camera, and those are things that the Lumix S5 Mark II did have. It also isn't able to shoot in 6K full frame open gate, which is a bummer as well, but I'm not sure if Sony will ever release that to other cameras than the FX line. Sony is probably going to release the a7 IV in the next coming weeks or months, so I'm really curious to see how they're going to respond to the market. Will they add open gate and things such as anamorphic D-squeeze in the camera? I honestly don't think so. Anyways, other than that, I don't really have any complaints of filmmaking about this camera. They could have added 4K 60 uncropped on this camera, but I don't really shoot slow motion that often, so I don't really mind that, and if I want to shoot slow motion, I have the Sony ZV-E1 for that. A flash would be cool, just like the X100 series, but I don't think they'd ever do this. A better EVF. It's not bad, but it could be better. A better screen. I mean, it's decent, but there's always room for improvement for sure. A better menu system. Look, Sony has improved their menus a lot over the last couple of years, but there is still a long way to go to get to the level of Blackmagic, Hasselblad, and Leica cameras. Those are just so intuitive and so easy to use. They're like Apple level. A joystick for focusing, that would make life easier, but it would also maybe make the camera bigger, and we don't want that. Full frame 6K open gate shooting and in-camera anamorphic D-squeeze. Those would just be super useful. The biggest appeal to this camera for me personally is the fact that you can keep it small and lightweight or rig it out to your liking, which makes it a super versatile hybrid camera body. It's easy to switch between photo and video through the custom mode dials, and the handling is good in my opinion. The ergonomics could be better, but you can't have everything, right? I'd rather have a small camera body instead of super good ergonomics. Even a camera like the Leica Q3 doesn't have the best ergonomics and feels better with a thumb grip. And that's how I use this camera as well. You can also add a bottom plate, which I did for a while, but I like this camera as lightweight as possible. And even though I complained about the menus, I have no issues navigating them, and the 3 pages of quick menu items are super useful. Okay, so this is what I would recommend you to get. If you have the same needs as me and you're in for a small hybrid camera body, then get the a7C II. If you do lots of client work, it's probably better to wait for the a7 V. I never had any reliability issues with the Sony a7C II, but you never know, right? And you always want to have a backup for whenever you're shooting for a client and they're actually paying you. I'm actually very happy with my current camera setup. the Sony a7C II and the Sony ZV-E1, which I'm shooting on right now. Even though I'm happy, I still feel this pull towards owning a third camera like a Fuji or getting a Leica someday. And I'm not sure what this pull is, but look, I love my Sonys, and the a7C II is a big step forward in terms of aesthetics and how it looks, in my opinion, but it still comes nowhere close to how a Fuji looks and how a Leica looks and feels. So I really hope that this is going to be an ongoing trend forward, like how Nikon did it with the ZF, but even then, I find that camera a bit too big and too bulky. So if they could make like a Fuji X100V format camera for Sony, like with the same looks, then I would 100% get that camera. But for now, the Sony a7C II is a nice middle ground. If I'd ever have some spare money, I might get the Fuji X Pro 2 or the X Pro 3 or even an X Pro 4 if that ever comes out. But next month I'm getting the Pentax 17 half frame camera, and it's actually a film camera, and I feel like that's going to scratch this need, like that I feel like I need to get inspired and just an aesthetically beautiful camera. So we'll see how that works out. Obviously one of the dream cameras would be a Leica Q3 or one of these Leica M cameras, but those are just crazy expensive. And I could get rid from the a7C II, for example, keep my Sony ZV-E1 for video, and then get like a Fuji X Pro 2 or X Pro 3. But I know myself, and then I'm going to miss like the perfect hybrid camera, because when you get like an X Pro 2 or an X Pro 3, then you are limited to having only nice photos again, and not having nice photos and videos into one body. So I'm not going to do that. Anyway, to conclude the video, a message to me and you: the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but the gas is. Okay, that sounded awful. So only upgrade when it's really necessary, or you need that spark in your craft again. Thanks for watching. Peace.